Hello there and welcome to another live chapter reading for Itsy Bitsy But Bits. Today I shall be reading from the Liminal Space, Antipodes series, book 2 by T.S. Simons. Chapter 1. Not long now. Fraser's smug grin was blatantly clear from his tone. I could sense it, even as I focused on a shovel laden with dirt in the garden bed I was heaving. Excited? Absolutely shitting myself, I confessed, glancing up, momentarily blinded by the haze of the orange sun setting behind him, blurred from the dense, transparent fabric. But I would never tell her that. It seemed ludicrous I would be the one fearful in this situation. I didn't want to admit that it was a massive leap into the cavern of the unknown that kept me awake at night. Curiosity got the better of me, and pausing in my work, I looked across at him and asked, "What's it like, being a father?" All I can say is that it's quite a ride. Fraser, now with two daughters of his own, toddling Eve and newborn Iona, was in an excellent position to make an assessment. "My friend, your life will never be the same." "Oh, please don't say ride," I grimaced. Vivid technical flashbacks of the horrendous journeys I had taken through the Antipodian portal between August Island off the southern coast of New Zealand and Lewis in the Scottish Outer Hebrides flashed before my eyes, temporarily disabling me from my work. The third and final journey from Belcamp Island to New Grange Island on the equinox a year ago had been even more traumatic, especially the midpoint. Each time I had not only thought I was going to die, but I had fervently wished for death. Death was decidedly preferable to that. I shuddered again. I was lucky. Until the last few years I had lived in a comparatively safe time of human history, a time when medicines were readily available and disease didn't wipe out complete villages in the space of a week. Despite the waterborne protozoa that had obliterated nearly the entire human population in a comparatively short period of a year, I had never actually been near death. But swirling through the vortex, feeling my limbs being stripped of their muscle, sinew and tendon, knowing I was being torn apart, I had wished to be dead. The first time I had travelled had been a genuine accident, and that had been the most harrowing. Not knowing what had happened and wondering if it would go on forever. The second time had been a deliberate attempt to find my first wife, Freya, and the last time to return to Letitia. Gorgeous, sweet Letitia, who was now very pregnant with our first child. She looked much like a ripe cherry, glowing and fit to burst, but cheerful despite her size and evident discomfort. "Any hot tips on parenting?" I asked Fraser, only half-heartedly. I wasn't sure that I wanted to know. But I also didn't want to dwell on the antipodal passage any more than entirely necessary. Fraser's face instantly lit up with such glee that it startled me. Sitting back on his heels, he rubbed his hands together joyously. I had opened Pandora's box. Just as I was about to blurt, "I was only joking," he began his jubilant monologue. "Get used to no sleep. Some kids don't sleep through the night for years, so start practicing now by setting your alarm every hour, getting up and walking around, then trying to get back to sleep just in time for the next alarm to go off. Sunset is a witching hour. They scream and cry and you will get nothing done, so don't even plan it. Get used to everything smelling like baby. Little Leona smell permeates everything, man. Clothes, furniture, even your hair. I think it's a biological thing, so you don't forget them and accidentally leave them somewhere. Before Neve, I never knew that babies had a scent, but seriously, man, they do, and everything smells like them." After a pause, he continued, "Oh, you will never again be able to speak to your partner without being interrupted. Speaking in broken sentences and interpreting each other's facial expressions is key here. I think this might be practiced for when they are older and you want to talk about something that you don't want them to understand. So learn secret code now. Don't even bother cleaning anything because the minute you do, they'll vomit everywhere. Ever heard the expression helly spew? Number 3s? Reacting to my nonplussed face, he cackled and taunted. "Well, get used to it, buddy. This is your new normal." Seeing my bewildered expression, Fraser's face softened somewhat as he smiled. "Man, when I was where you are now, expecting my first, I was absolutely shitting my shorts. I had no idea what to expect, but the truth is, you can never really prepare for it. You just adapt. Despite the challenges, the sleepless nights and the turmoil, they are the most amazing magical creatures. You don't think you could love them more. Then they do something tiny like smile at you with their enormous eyes fixated on you, and your heart just dissolves into a pile of mush." You would defend them with your life, armed with nothing more than a toothbrush. Like if a bear came to attack your child, you know without question that you would fight it off barehanded just to protect them. I had seen this side of Fraser when he was around his daughters. Soft, nurturing, gentle, different from his usually outgoing and somewhat forceful personality. I would hate to be the boyfriend of one of his daughters, I thought with a snort. When he was near his children, Fraser morphed into something else. A father, I realised. Self-doubt crept into the dark recesses of my mind. Would I be a good father? What was a good father, anyway? My own parents had been loving, firm, yet always supportive. As a child, I have thought of them as very harsh, making us do chores and helping with household maintenance. Until my mid-teens, I thought I had it tough compared to my friends, who seemed to cruise through life gifted with everything they wanted and a lot of free time in which to get into trouble. Mum, with the control of a well-seasoned regimental sergeant major, controlled our time with jobs and wouldn't let us even watch TV until we had done all our allocated chores for the weekend. Mum was the boss. Dad, being a shift worker, often worked weekends, but it was Mum who didn't allow slacking until the work was done. Once we had finished, she would tell us, your time is your own. All of us had a list, and no matter how much we whinged or complained we were sick or tired, Mum ensured we finished it. It wasn't until I lived on August that I realised what my parent had instilled in us was a strong work ethic, something taught over a long period. They had treated us as equal members of the family, and therefore needed to understand both the enjoyable things, but also the responsibilities. We knew we needed to maintain things or do basic jobs like emptying bins, vacuuming, walking the dog or mowing lawns. Bills needed to be paid and came as a priority over recreational spending. They included us in plans for saving for big holidays or a new car. As a family unit, we choose what we would cut out, things like takeaway meals and trips to the cinema to save for our family projects. Saoirse and I valued our free time as we felt we had earned it. Both she and I had held down part-time jobs while studying, something few of my friends were able to do. My parents had taught me the value of prioritising. I knew that if I tackled a task, I had to do it well and complete it. Mum's mantra was do it well, do it once. It had taken me a very long time to work out what she meant, but now I always worked with this in mind. Letitia had grown up with no such role models, yet bizarrely she too had a strong work ethic. Hers, unlike mine, arose from being the primary caregiver for her alcoholic mother. Likely she had done far more than I ever did. But did I guiltily suspect that I had complained about my allocated chores far more? Memories of faking illness, doing a crappy job by rushing it, made me ashamed. Pleading that I was too sick to walk to the dog crossed my mind. Mum resolute demanding that it be done regardless, and on one embarrassingly memorable occasion, even handing me a sick bag to take with me. Just in case. A pan from my parents wrenched my heart for the millionth time. I fervently wished they were here to welcome their grandchild and help guide us on this parenting journey. If only I could thank them for teaching me so many useful things that had stood me in good stead here. I had life skills, thanks to them. All those weekends spent helping Mum and Dad maintain the house and later building the cottage on our holiday block of land meant I had learnt skills without even realising it. Leigh was quite unperturbed with the concept of impending motherhood. Despite having no siblings of her own, we were close to Fraser and Isla, so perhaps she had learned what to do by watching Isla and the other mothers here. Or maybe it was just innate knowledge in a woman. Parenthood was such an abstract concept for a man. Your partner gets fatter and fatter, then boom, baby. She has months to get used to the idea, infinitesimal movements, tiny kicks, an indicator of the change to come. When I asked her curiously what it felt like, she described it as like the flutter of a butterfly inside her belly, or a quick jerk on a fishing line. 1 second it's there, and the next gone, making you question whether you really felt it at all. For a man, it goes from theoretical concept to a noisy, messy reality within minutes. Sure, you get to feel the occasional quick or squirm with a strategically placed hand on a bulging stomach, but it wasn't quite the same. For men, it's a life-changing moment. Quiet life to crying baby all in the space of minutes. Finishing my work in silence, I thought as I did now and then of my childhood. My sister Saoirse, her own tragedy still so recent in the death of her fiancé when I had left, hadn't lived to become a parent or an aunt. All because she had asthma, and I didn't. The look of the draw, that one. Why does one child inherit an illness and the other doesn't? Despite looking alike, both tall and muscular, inherited from our father, she was red-haired, inherited from our mother, while I was dark-haired like Dad. But it was Saoirse who had inherited Dad's asthma, whereas I had not. Watching Fraser pulling potatoes in the garden bed adjacent to my own, I realised that my mother would have the most terrible case of granny lust, that condition when an older woman desperately wants to become a grandparent. No one would have permitted to hold her grandchild while my mother still had functional arms. I smiled, thinking of my mother, the long red plait down her back, swishing as she weeded her garden, bustled around the kitchen. I had a sudden image of my mother smiling down at a baby she cradled in her arms wrapped in a blanket. A memory, but whose baby was it? Back in my brain I couldn't place the image. It just hadn't seemed important at the time. Another one of her friends or colleagues had given birth. I hadn't really paid any attention. Now I would have given my right arm to see her smiling down fondly at her own grandchild, my grandchild, spoiling him or her in a way that you can't with your own children, allegedly. 10 months ago I had returned to Lewis after travelling through the portal on Belcamp Island off the coast of New Zealand to Newgrange Island. The Newgrange residents had a productive and friendly reciprocal relationship with their antipodal neighbours and then welcomed me wholeheartedly. They used the portal mainly to share cargo, but people braved the journey as well. Initially happy to rest, eat and socialise, they had wanted to know everything about August Island and Lewis, Scotland, the two communities I had lived in. Although I was only there for 3 days, I would find myself continually retelling the stories of my adventures. The hot springs with the Celtic symbols in August where I first came through, the welcoming community in Scotland centred near the standing stones of Callanish. A few of the Irish had been to Callanish on holidays. Geographically, it just wasn't that far, at least not by Australian standards. Like most Irish, they were friendly, outgoing and loved to chat. On my final evening, they had summoned me to the home of Kevin O'Sullivan to recount my tales, a studious-looking man in his early 30s. He was greying at the temples of his dark hair, making him appear older than he was. Despite his unassuming manner, it was clear from the respect shown to him by the other residents that he was a leader of sorts. Not officially. None of the communities I had visited had a democratically elected leader, but he had the aura of a natural leader. People followed his instruction, listening when he spoke, looking up to him and seeking his guidance. He was a born leader, whether or not he realised it. Settled in his cosy study, Kevin had listened intently to my tale, but he had not interrupted or acted surprised. Respectful and pleasant, I knew from my conversations with Blake on Belcamp that nothing I told him was a surprise. They knew about antipodal points, what the journey was like, the feeling of discovering another community of survivors at the opposite end of the world. My fantastical tale of travelling across the globe on the days of the solstices, approximately 20,000 kilometres in the space of minutes, was one they knew it themselves, and for some of them, personal experience. When I had reached my conclusion, he leaned back in his chair and surveyed me thoughtfully. Waiting for what he would say, I watched him. His face was calm and betrayed no thought or emotion. I couldn't tell what he was thinking, and I found this fascinating. Everyone who knew me had said that everything I thought showed on my face the second I was thinking it. It meant I was a shocking liar, but it had taken me years to work this out. One had laughed hysterically the day I had finally realised that she had always been able to tell when I was lying to her. Finally, Kevin had spoken. We had wondered if there were other portals like Newgrange. He waved his arm towards the enormous ancient complex, the community being several kilometres to the east. We speculated that we were the only ones, but now, he paused. How fantastic to think there is a network of such passages, that our ancestors knew of this and used it to travel places that must have appeared unreal to them. You said that there were Pict markings in the cave on your island, August you called it. Nodding, I replied. There were 2 large menhirs, upright stones, you know. Both were spirals and triquetra, very similar to the ones here at Newgrange. I had been here before. Many years ago, my mother was, I corrected, a teacher, and she loved ancient Celtic sites, especially stone circles. We came to Newgrange on one of our trips back to visit family. I must admit, though, I didn't appreciate it at the time. Kevin smiled. I too had been to Callanish. The strange thing is, there are no markings at Callanish. You are right, there aren't, but Callanish was buried for centuries under the peat. I had wondered. I stopped, not wanting to appear foolish. I wasn't a historian or an archaeologist. Kevin's sparkly blue eyes, bright and receptive over his dark beard, greying ever so slightly around his chin, had encouraged me to continue. Well, I just wondered if the sites were always a point of travel. Generations of people must have known, the Picts, the Celts, the Norse, Romans even. How did Callanish become lost for so many centuries? Newgrange is Neolithic, Kevin said thoughtfully, scratching his beard. Before 3200 BCE, it is thought. Older than the pyramids of Egypt by 600 years, and older than Stonehenge by nearly 1,000 years. Historians estimate it took a team of 300 men over 30 years to build. But did you know that the menhirs, the standing stone circle at Siraj Newgrange, are much newer? Bronze Age, it is believed. Answering your question, many generations knew that it was a special place because they built it in stages. The carvings are probably Neolithic. We often attribute them to the Celts, but in reality, they are far older. I hope you enjoyed this chapter reading and that you'll go check out the book. Thanks very much for watching. Bye bye.